After a tough loss to Northwestern, the Hawkeyes will be home at Kinnick one more time this year as they host the Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Incompetent Sports Talk. Welcome to Incompetent Sports Talk, along with Mike Rabin and Jake Burgers. I'm Alex Salzma. The Iowa Hawkeyes, both in basketball and football, had a rough weekend. The Iowa Hawkeye football team lost at Northwestern 21-17, and then the Hawkeye basketball team lost on Sunday to South Dakota State by 10. South Dakota State's first win versus the Big Ten school since 1930. Mike, let's talk about the football team. Break down the game. Why did we lose to Northwestern for the 5th time in the last 6 years?
Well, when you look at the box score, I think the biggest reason why Iowa lost the football game was they were 2 for 14 on third down conversions, and that was a big problem. Iowa was not able to move the ball and possess the ball for long periods of time. Obviously, in the third quarter, Iowa made some big plays, had the long connection to Darrell Johnson-Koulianos for the touchdown. Adam Robinson ran the ball for over 100 yards. A lot of those yards came in the third quarter. But, you know, when you play 3 bad quarters to only 1 good quarter, it's hard to win a game against a team like Northwestern that isn't great, but a team that's disciplined and will make you pay for mistakes. And in the fourth quarter, an 85-yard touchdown drive, a 91-yard touchdown drive was ultimately the reason Iowa lost. The defense was not able to come up with big plays. And offensively, Ricky Stanzi, you know, Iowa's up 17-7, throws an interception, probably a pass that could have been avoided. Iowa's marching down the field, and that mistake kind of gave Northwestern some momentum and got them back into the ball game. So congratulations to Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald for having the team ready to play and out-coaching Kirk Ferentz, because every year it seems like now Northwestern finds a way, and I think that's as a result of coaching.
Jake.
And Mike talked a little bit about Iowa's struggles on third down offensively, but we also struggled on third down defensively. Dan Persa created a lot of time with his legs, picked up a lot of first downs with his feet, really kind of demoralized our defense, and at the end of the game, they looked pretty gassed. Adrian Claiborne came off to the sidelines a number of times, couldn't keep going as Northwestern ran that hurry-up offense, and Dan Persa had a great game before hurting his Achilles on the game-winning touchdown pass. It's just a heartbreaking loss as usual to Northwestern, but this Northwestern team deserves a lot of credit. They had a great game plan against Iowa, playing very conservative on defense, trying to make us throw over the top. We couldn't, and Dan Persa, player of the game. I mean, it's tough to say where Northwestern will be without him now for the rest of the season.
I'd still take Kirk Ferentz over Pat Fitzgerald any day of the week.
Absolutely, but he's
overall maybe not head-to-head though.
Yeah, Fitzgerald is out. That coaching staff, Hankowitz as well. You know, they've out-coached the Iowa coaching staff for a couple seasons now, and I think 2007 was the only time that Kirk Ferentz has actually outdone it. We got to win, and you know, Northwestern was a better team, but all these other seasons, Iowa's been the better team, and they just haven't found a way to win.
Well, Northwestern this year deserves a lot of credit too. They were very close to being 9-1. They've blown some pretty big leads earlier this year, especially against Michigan State late in the game. They could easily be a 9-1 team at this point.
There's some other big upsets this weekend in college football. 4 of them that stuck out in my mind. First, Colorado won their first Big 12 game of the year as they upset Iowa State. This happened just days after Dan Hawkins was fired as the football coach. An injury-depleted Notre Dame team upset number 14 Utah. Washington State won their first Pac-10 game in a long time as they beat Oregon State 31-14. And Minnesota, with an interim coach, won their first Big Ten game of the year at a pretty good Illinois team. And the question I'm going to pose to you guys is, which win do you think was the most impressive? Jake, give me your choice.
Well, Notre Dame was very impressive in their win over Utah, but I think the team that I least expected to pull out a win was Minnesota, and that's why I think their game's the most impressive. This is a team that won their opener, but then lost 9 in a row after that. Team left for dead. Tim Brewster fired. Laughingstock of the Big Ten. We've had a lot of fun at their expense on this show already, but what they did against Illinois was just very impressive. They came back in the fourth quarter when it's easy for a 9-loss team just to give up at that point. They battled back. They won that game under interim coach Jeff Horton. That was a very impressive win in my mind. Not a very substantial win. I mean, they're not going to bowl or anything, but I was very impressed. I did not see that coming at all against an Illinois team that's just one win away from being bowl eligible, I believe. That I think that's the most impressive win.
Yeah, I was impressed too with the last drive of the game, 10-play drive with under 2 minutes to go for Adam Weber, bringing that Minnesota team, getting the score. And you know the real reason why they won, though. Tim Brewster texted Adam Weber on Friday and said, quote, "Call me after you beat them." That's according to ESPN's Adam Rittenberg. Great reporting there. And my choice is going to be Washington State. Washington State hadn't won a Pac-10 game since 2008. They hadn't won a road game in nearly 3 years. Their only win this season was a come-from-behind 1-point win over FCS team Montana State. They've been plagued by injuries all year. This school has really been down in the dumps. They've been getting better week to week, but they've still been losing most of their games by double digits, and they finally got a win in the Pac-10, snapping that 16-game Pac-10 losing streak. Oregon State had a 7-game home winning streak too, and they couldn't quite hold on to beat Washington State. So I'm going to go with Paul Wolf, Washington State. Mike, who are you going with?
Yeah, Oregon State, they've been reeling a little bit since the loss of James Rogers, the wide receiver, just haven't played as well. And Washington State, 2 weeks ago, lost by a touchdown to Cal. 2 weeks before that, lost by 10 points against Stanford. So this team's shown improvement throughout this season, and it was nice to see them finally get a win.
They win 31-14.
Yeah, so congratulations to Paul Wolf. But I think Notre Dame's win over Utah is by far, in a way, the most surprising win. I mean, let's take a look at this Notre Dame team in terms of injuries. Dane Chris, starting quarterback, out for the season. Theo Riddick lost earlier in the season. He was the leading receiver at the time. Michael Floyd, who did play against Utah, had missed a couple games this season with injury. Armando Allen, the starting running back, out with injury. I mean, this team was absolutely depleted at the skill positions on offense, and they found a way to come out and get the job done. All the distractions around that program with the video coordinator dying during practice a couple weeks ago because of the inclement weather, and then obviously Notre Dame losing to Tulsa the same week. I mean, that's just very difficult situation for them all around. And then to come back and beat a team like Utah, who, yes, lost by 40 points to TCU the week before, but a Utah team nonetheless is still a quality football team, beating them 28-3, and the defense having their best performance probably that I've seen in the last few seasons. I think Notre Dame has to be the most surprising win for me.
And Notre Dame exposed them as a fraud. Utah is a fraud.
Yeah.
Notre Dame exposed them their first time they've beaten a ranked team in 11 tries. And the Notre Dame students stormed the field after the game, which I think has shown where this Notre Dame program is right now, Jake.
Yeah, and you were talking about Utah being a fraud. Just 2 weeks ago, we were talking about them possibly being in the national championship race if they could beat TCU at home. They did not. They fall apart against TCU and against Notre Dame. Notre Dame also without Kyle Rudolph,
That's right.
Another one of their skilled position receivers.
Yeah, and Tommy Reese, that quarterback, I don't think anybody saw him coming in, throwing 3 touchdown passes. The special teams blocking a punt, running it back in. Special teams, Utah has been a staple all season long, and Notre Dame did a really good job. So congratulations to Brian Kelly.
Yeah, let's talk about Colorado, the only one we haven't talked about yet. Iowa State comes in. They lose in overtime by 1 point. They went for 2 instead of going for the extra point. And so a lot of people thought they were just going to waltz into Boulder and get the win. Dan Hawkins is fired. The coach's son's playing quarterback, has to deal with that. And then they come out and they win by 20 points versus Iowa State. Now, Iowa State, if they want to go to a bowl game, they got to beat Missouri. I mean, what's this deal with this? I mean, how did Iowa State get this win?
Well,
How did Colorado get this one?
Yeah, the reason I didn't pick that game, although it was very surprising, is I think that game had a little bit more to do with the way Iowa State played. Because we've seen historically in the past, Iowa State can get up for some big games against Iowa, against Nebraska. Those are their 2 big games every year on the schedule. I think they were pretty demoralized after going for 2 in overtime against Nebraska. I think they came out very flat against Colorado. You do have to give Colorado credit for beating a team like Iowa State by that much, who was just 1 game away from being bowl eligible. Now they're going to be big underdogs against Missouri. But I think this game's more about the lackluster performance of Iowa State than the performance of Colorado.
Yeah, and you look, whenever Iowa State gets a Big 12 win, you see the celebration videos. It's always an emotional high. And then when they lose a close game, they come out and lose like this. But you take a look at Colorado. The week before, they gave up a 28-point lead to Kansas. Kansas scored 35 points in the fourth quarter, but they were able to bounce back. maybe coaching. I don't know what the deal
and I
is.
think one thing that we may have overlooked and pundits across the country overlooked is the fact that Iowa State's defense is bad. I mean, I don't know how to – I mean, I just have to be blunt about it. I mean, they give up over 30 points a football game. And, yes, they competed with Nebraska, had a shot to win at the game. They beat a terrible Texas team. I mean, I can't believe I'm saying that. Terrible Texas football team that's just really bad. But Iowa State's defense has been atrocious pretty much all season. I mean, they have a few guys, Jake not on the defensive line, who's a good player, but in reality, you look at Colorado, they've been able to put points on the board this season, but they've had a lot of turnovers, a lot of special teams mistakes, and they just haven't been able to get wins. Hawkins just couldn't get that team together. They get sort of a clean slate with him gone, no pressure, no one expects them to win. They come out, play their game, and get the job done. I was very surprised by the margin, though. I don't think I would have seen it coming by 20 points.
Let's pick some games that are going to be played this weekend. Number 7, Wisconsin travels to Ann Arbor to take on Michigan. Wisconsin hasn't won Ann Arbor since the early 1990s. Jake, who do you have winning this one?
Well, I'm going to be really excited to see these two offenses go toe-to-toe. Michigan scored over 60 points twice this year. Wisconsin scored over 70 points twice this year. The difference is I think Wisconsin actually has a defense. I think they go into Ann Arbor. They're competing for the Big Ten title, going to the Rose Bowl. They have more to play for. They have the better team. John Clay's status for this game is a little uncertain, but that offense keeps rolling with Monty Ball and James White running behind that great offensive line. Scott Tolzien's a very efficient quarterback. I think they go into Ann Arbor. There's going to be a lot of points in this game, but they come out on top.
Yeah, that Wisconsin offense last week scored on all 12 possessions they had the ball. Mike, does that offense keep rolling this week, or does Michigan outscore Wisconsin?
I think Wisconsin's going to win the ball game. It's interesting. Indiana lost Ben Chappell in the second quarter of that game. You know, he wore a boot the week before the Iowa game, came out, wasn't as mobile as he normally is, but still had a good performance, got really banged up against Wisconsin. And I think Michigan's going to have some problems. They turn the ball over a ton every game. They turned it over 5 times against Purdue in a win this past week. They turned it over 5 times against Iowa. They've turned it over 4 more times in 4 Big Ten games this season. So Wisconsin will force turnovers. They'll make Michigan pay. And I think Michigan will get energized. It's like you said, Michigan has not lost to Wisconsin at home since '94, and they've only lost that one time since 1965. And Wisconsin has no real history of winning in Ann Arbor, but that's just a historical note. These two teams are very different. I think Wisconsin in the trenches, that offensive line is going to have a day with Michigan's front 7.
Number 8, Nebraska travels to College Station to take on number 19, Texas A&M. I'm going to go with Texas A&M. They've won 4 games in a row. 2 of those wins were double-digit wins versus Baylor and Oklahoma. And ever since Mike Sherman put Gerard Johnson on the bench, this team hasn't lost. They look like a completely different team. This is a legitimate football team. They got Nebraska coming in, who didn't look impressive versus Iowa State, didn't look impressive versus a very bad Kansas team. I like A&M, who I think's rolling a little better than Nebraska to win this game. Mike, who do you have?